here. So we've got from the Minnesota Parents Alliance, Cristine Trooien.
Trooien.
Boy, I forgot it already. Trooien. And we're gonna have her take as much time here as possible, and she'll let you know when she'll take questions. But she is full of information. I've heard nothing but great stuff about her. And looking at the website, I get excited for what she's doing. So Cristine, come on up and take over.
Thanks for that warm intro. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Smiling faces here in Lakeville. I've never been to this church and this facility. It's beautiful. All right. Well, I think, this is a small enough group, so we can kind of keep this conversational. I was just telling Dan, I'm never sure when I'm speaking to a group how many people actually know a lot about what's going on in schools. Some people have no idea what's going on in schools. A lot of people know who we are and what we have been up to in the last couple of years, and some people have never heard of us at all. So happy to kind of meet everyone where they are, and I want to make sure that this session is informative to you and that all of your questions and insights are heard. So I'm just going to start out, and I think honestly, if you have a question, put a hand up mid-presentation. I don't have an hour and a half worth of content here in my slide deck, so we can definitely stop and start as needed. Okay, well, here we are. So reclaiming our schools through our state and our state through local leadership. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we got here, but we actually have two separate organizations at this point. We started out as Minnesota Parents Alliance, which is a 501c4. And when we first started out, we thought, we'll just help some people run for school board and they'll win and then they'll fix everything. Like, we'll be done. We did that. We helped a lot of people win when we first started in 2022. And we pretty quickly realized that there's a lot more work to do and it's not so easy. So we'll get into it, but just to kind of introduce or reintroduce myself, my name is Cristine Trooien. I have the pronunciation right there. It's 4 vowels in a row. No one ever gets it right. And I'm the executive director of both organizations, Minnesota Parents Alliance and Minnesota Partnership for Achievement. I'm a Minnesotan by marriage. You can see my family right there. That's my husband, Eric, and my 3 kids. I also have twins, and I know there are a couple other people in Minnesota politics that have twins, so I think if you need something done right, you need to just ask a twin parent, because they're already crazy. So, we're not moving. We've decided that Minnesota's worth fighting for. My husband has deep roots here, Scandinavian roots here in Minnesota, and our kids like hockey too much, so like there's no other state in America we can live in and enjoy ourselves as much. So we're committed to getting this right. I think that we're sort of at a pivotal time here. Everybody knows the landscape that we're dealing with, but man, it's so fun to run into other Minnesotans that love it here and they're not moving either. And so there's a lot to like about what's going on right now. I think people really are sort of digging their heels in, the ones that are going to stay. So that's been exciting to be part of. And I always introduce myself as just a parent. I am not political, or I wasn't before I started this project. And I feel so strongly that local communities and just local leadership is where it's at generally. I think just nationally, I think there has been this sort of realization among people that had never formally cared about school board races or city council races or anything that's going on in their local community. And watching people just really get deeply involved in those areas has been, again, really just fun to be part of. I love education. That's just kind of my thing anyway, so this project just resonates with me. I think that, we need public education. Say what you will about what's going on, but I know that school choice has become a conversation now, and I think it's probably a little bit of a long shot in Minnesota. We're not probably going to move to universal school choice anytime in the super near future. However, when we look at states that have that, still over like 85% of kids are educated in their public schools. So even when they open up those avenues for families to make other choices and they financially empower them to do that, the reality ends up that probably 85+% of people still are having their children educated in public schools. So we have to stay there. I think we have to keep a foothold in public schools. We have to care about those kids, and we have to care about the fact that those districts are being run well, and if for no other reason, like 40% of our state's budget is going to our public education system. So if you're a taxpayer in Minnesota, you should really care about making sure that money is being used to educate our kids and not for all of the other things.
What percentage of kids in public school right now in Minnesota? Do you know?
It's probably more than 85. I know right now our homeschool rate is about between 3 and 4, somewhere like that. And maybe that's a good question. I should know that exact percentage, but It's up there because we don't really have a robust menu of options. I know where I live, there really aren't that many private options, and depending on kind of what your philosophy is and where you would see your kids, is it a smaller Christian sort of private academy like this one? There are kind of some micro schools and some church-based learning centers popping up. I'm a homeschool parent, probably for obvious reasons at this point, like I know too much. And I really genuinely love homeschooling my family, but I know that was number one, not our plan. In 2020, my kids, my oldest, who are now 10, were in preschool. And the whole world was going crazy. We're like, we'll just sit this one out. I'm home. They're gonna go to kindergarten. We'll just do that at home. And we ended up just loving it. And that was a really unforeseen departure from what we saw. We thought our life was gonna be like. We moved to a great school district. We thought we'll send them to the local public school. And so we've really gone in a different direction, but loved it. It's working for us. But I continually say we're on a month-to-month lease. Like, we make different decisions all the time based on who your kids are, what they need, what the family needs. So for right now, homeschool works for our family, but I will be the first to say it doesn't work for everyone, and on some days it doesn't work for me. So right now my kids are at a co-op at our church. I will go pick them up. My husband and I kind of share duties, and so it works for our family, but it is really not. I dislike it when people say, get your kids out of public school and homeschool them. You have no idea what you're asking of families who have 2 working parents, and it's just not workable for everyone, nor is a really high price tag for private education, and that's just the reality. So there are a lot of families who do feel, for better or worse, term, trapped. They feel trapped in their public school because it's like, we just don't have any other workable options. And so I would encourage those families who feel like for the near term or the long term, you're gonna be in the public system, get involved. There are so many opportunities for families to get involved and not just drop kids off at the school door and pick them up, or have the bus drop them off later, and not have the connectivity that you need to make sure that that you're involved and invested in your kids' education. So we'll get into all that, but that's kind of my story. So home educator as well, and I love a challenge, which is why I've started down this road of initiating this project. And it's kind of one of those things where you just do something and then you do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so I really truly thought that in 2022, when we first started this, it would just be sort of a quick and easy, let's just help people understand how to campaign well and win some school board races, and then it'll just kind of take care of itself. Well, it didn't. So this was the parent movement in 2021. When I first turned on to what was happening in my local community, again, we were sort of on the fence. Are we gonna send our kids to school? Are we not? And we watched all these really invested parents get, more active. They were showing up at school board meetings, and these weren't the parents that were yelling and getting hauled out by the police. These were just really good, invested, smart, constructive participants. And some of them ran for school board and they lost. And they lost because they've never campaigned before, and they had full-time jobs and young kids, and they filed for candidacy August 15th, and they had less than 2 months to get their message out to the community. So it was clear at that time to me that there has to be some other way. There must be some way to help these parents who would be great school board members learn how to campaign, do it right, do it well, win their race, and hopefully be seated. So as a function of doing what we're doing, we had all this chaos in 2021. It was, the domestic terrorists are taking over the school board, and now this is what it looks like. We have 180 plus elected leaders who are in our network of school board members across the state, and that represents 75 districts out of the 330 in Minnesota. So slowly but surely, we're making some progress. And this was a reflection of over the last 3 election cycles. So we started in 2022. 2023, because it's an odd year, had fewer elections, but the odd year elections, as there are elections this year, there are fewer. There are probably about 30 school districts that still operate on the odd year election cycle. But some of those are the biggest ones. So Anoka-Hennepin, biggest school district in the state, they have theirs on the odd year. Minnetonka, Wayzata, some of the bigger, Bloomington. So those are ones to watch, because that sort of voter turnout, as you know, that may be the only thing on the ballot on a Tuesday in November in 2025 for a lot of these communities. So even just getting the word out to people about why school board elections matter and why they should turn out and vote on an odd year has made a really big difference. So at this point—
Why do they do it on an odd year?
Good question. Well, I have my suspicions of why I think that is. I think that it works to the advantage of sort of the status quo. I think if you kind of have a school board that you're more or less content with, and there isn't a real high voter turnout for people that are running on change or challenger candidates, you can kind of keep things clipping along. And I think in some of these big districts, the people that tend to turn out in an odd year are people who are very invested in education. So it's the teachers union, supporters, people that are really, very into kind of maintaining the status quo in public education. So in my opinion, I think there are some districts that benefit from that, or they, like the people that kind of are currently running things, benefit from that. We have seen a shift. I know Wayzata has talked about it. I don't know if they've officially voted, but they have talked about moving theirs to the even years, and I think that we will start seeing more of the districts move that way too. It is expensive for districts to just kind of, have the administration piece of having these odd year elections, and so there's an argument to be made there that it's just kind of a drain on their district staff time to do it that way. So I hope that that's the case. I hope that they all shift to the even year. I think that would benefit everyone. I think this is too important to sit out. And I think that when you're having it on the odd year, there's just too many people that just don't come out and vote that way. So this is where we're at. We've got about 180 in our network right now. I'm hoping to grow that again this year. We have kind of just been this like word of mouth leadership network. So I believe that of all the school board members in the state of Minnesota, I think there are a lot of people that are sort of with us in terms of seeing the value of stronger, more well-informed leadership at the local level. I just believe that and a lot of people will say, their politics are conservative. I'm a conservative, I'm on the school board, I'm in my third term. A lot of our kind of outstate rural districts, the composition of their school board is not oppositional to what it is that we're trying to advocate for. It's just that those elected leaders do not know how to deliver change because they're really vulnerable to kind of the status quo advice and guidance that they get from the Minnesota State School Board Association, for example. They're not a bad entity, but they are very invested in kind of, again, keeping things clipping along, making sure referendums and levies pass, making sure that everything is just kind of very status quo. They really like the idea of boards voting unanimously in public meetings. So it's okay, just work out your stuff privately in your work sessions, and then when you come and vote, it should be a 6-0, 7-0 vote, every single time. That's the unity of voice that a lot of times you'll hear from the School Board Association encouraging boards. That's in their assessment, a highly functional board operates that way. Our organization takes the position that there is room for some debate, and there ought to be some debate that you are reflecting in the public meetings, because the community doesn't agree 100% on every issue all the time, as we've seen recently, and it's good to have that public debate. It's good for constituents to see the people that represent them asking those questions, bringing those issues forward in public meeting, and offering the opportunity for the public to engage too. I know that over the last several years, there's been some shifting with boards saying we don't want to take public comment anymore. We're going to shut that part of the meeting off. We'll sequester it in some other, listening session or something that kind of happens off the record. A lot of school boards now do not record their public meetings, and so it's really hard for just the average constituent to, if you miss the meeting, you can't attend at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday or whatever. What happened? What was said? What are you talking about? Yes, they post their agenda, but that doesn't always really give, a clear picture of was there any debate on any of these issues, or were there community members that were bringing some concerns forward and speaking at the microphone that I didn't get to hear because there isn't a recording of that and they don't track that in the minutes. So I think bringing forward just the transparency piece is so much of what our leadership network is really championing. It's just people need to know, and they can't know if you're not going to provide them those insights. Record the meeting. That's in this day and age, we have a recording right now. It's so easy to do, right? That's not a heavy lift for most districts to go ahead and record it, post it to their YouTube site, make that clear to the community what issues are being brought forward. So our motto really is parents aren't the problem, parents are the solution. I think there's this narrative that parents are sort of the villains in this situation, and you certainly hear it when you talk about the parental rights in terms of right now there's just a whole mess of issues related to gender identity and things like that, of how much parents should know or be involved, should they know or be involved at all. And parents are villainized often in those conversations as well, but we are of the opinion that parents really are the solutions, and trying to get them more involved and invested in our K-12 system is vital to the health and I think longevity of the system generally, because I think parents have been a little checked out. Parents are very vulnerable because they're busy and they have other things that they want to be doing to outsource their parenting to the schools. And not only does that not work, but it's really not fair to educators either. I mean, educators can only do so much during the time that they have those kids during the day. And so if the parent-teacher partnership is not strong and the parents are disengaged or not involved, it's pretty hard to ask our K-12 system to shape these children and train them up the way that they should go without parent involvement. So we really always reflect to ourselves, you know, parents can be upset about what's going on in public schools to some degree, but are you involved? Are you getting involved? Are you going to the meetings? Are you being part of committees? Are you looking for those opportunities? And are you even talking to your kids or their teachers? Like a lot of times, you know, people's first stop is like the public comment microphone to be upset about something. It's like, have you ever talked to your kid's teacher? Like, you know, there were a lot of things along the way sometimes in those situations that were missed. And then all of a sudden you have these parents that are super upset, and like rightfully so. But I think there's just a lot of room for transparency and communication before we get to sort of these flashpoint issues that so much of the media has highlighted, and we've seen that over the last few years. So here's kind of our success story again, just to reiterate. So we started out really training candidates, and so we've successfully identified, trained, and endorsed over 300 candidates since we've started in 2022. One of the strategies that we implemented in 2022 was a voter guide, because I am totally guilty of this. I never knew or cared who was running for my local school board, particularly like before I had children. And so that's a huge piece. The voter education piece in and of itself was something to be solved. And so we created a voter guide. It's digital, it's on our website, it's very easy to access. People can take it, you know, to the polls with them with a link on their phone. And a lot of times, you know, before people dash out to the polls, it's like you're looking at like judges and city council, like, do I know any of these people? Like, did I go to high school with any of these people? Can I call a friend and get a recommendation? So people are looking for that. Voters are looking for, if I care about student achievement and parental involvement and protecting parental rights, like, who are my candidates? Just give me the list. So our voter guide was really successful. We had a digital ad campaign to promote that, and we had over, I guess to date, 8.5 million impressions over the last 3 election cycles. So we are reaching Minnesotans. We've built this brand now. If people know that it's like, hey, for school board, go look at the Minnesota Parents Alliance voter guide. Those are solid candidates. They're vetted through us. A lot of them have trained with us, so we've gotten to know them over the course of helping them through their campaign training. And if we don't know, if there's a district where there are candidates that have been unknown to us, they haven't participated in our trainings, we typically have a network of parents or involved community members that can give us some insight, and we really rely on those parent groups, those advocacy groups in the districts to really inform our decision of, you know, are these the right people? Are they kind of ideologically aligned with us in terms of the philosophy of what our public schools should be for? And will they stand on those things? I think that is also something that, you know, you never really know until you get elected, you know, which kind of battles you're gonna stand strong on. And I know a lot of the school board members feel like they're drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot that comes at them and they can't fight every battle on day one. So picking and choosing what are the things that they're really gonna bring forward, and having the strategies to do that has really been a part of what we're doing to equip them. So anyway, we have 180 aligned school board members right now. That again represents about 75 districts. I'm really hoping that we can almost double that just based on outreach, because so far we haven't really done any sort of massive outreach campaign to school board members across the state. So there are a lot of school board members that don't really know that we exist, I think, and so that is something that we're trying to deliver on this year, is just really sending out, you know, mailers or other communications to all the school board members to just say, yes, for sure, participate in the State School Board Association and be involved in all these other sort of like, you know, education establishment. I don't like love that term, but I think that kind of like people know what I'm talking about when I say that. It's sort of like the status quo of education. Be part of all those things. But if you are interested in taking a step forward and really accelerating your leadership and being part of this network that's really focusing on student achievement, join our group too, because I think they will get a lot of insights and it will help them maybe change their perspective on what their role really ought to be to best represent their constituency. Okay, so we've become a national model, which is so great. I mean, I feel like Minnesota needs to be known for something good in the headlines these days. So I'm really proud of that fact. I feel like the people in our network have worked really, really hard to win their races and then also serve well. And it caught the attention of people nationally. And it's so surreal to get calls from other states saying, hey, like what you're doing in Minnesota is amazing. Can you come do that in our state? It's like, no, I can't, because I feel like I know Minnesota, well, I live here obviously, and like my relationships are here, but our model works. And so this model of training great candidates, identifying them, helping parent advocacy groups kind of incubate in their own districts, and then that's kind of a support piece that comes along good candidates to help them win their race. And then helping people once they're elected actually serve well has not really been done elsewhere. So we've sort of created this like unique, it seems so obvious, right? It's like, how could we not have all been doing that already? But again, people have just really overlooked these local governance pieces that I think are so vital, such a great bench builder. So anyway, we've caught the attention of others nationally. And so I have been working with some other organizations over the last couple of years to create a kind of national organization that's a little bit of like a alternative to the National School Boards Association, which was the group that actually called parents domestic terrorists. And so at that time when that happened, and there was that whole thing of Merrick Garland and working with the DOJ to label parents as domestic terrorists, there were a lot of states that severed their relationship with the National School Boards Association. Obviously, them doing that and being part of that was not it was not received well by parents, and school boards at the state level knew that. So the kind of next step is, okay, well, if you're not going to be part of the National School Board Association and you don't love what your state school board association is messaging on all the time or encouraging members to do, what do? You have to create something different and something better. And so again, I kind of partnered with some others and we created School Boards of Academic Excellence, which is sort of a capacity builder, because there's little groups like ours. We are still super little. We have a shoestring budget. It's basically me and a handful of volunteers. We have no paid staff. And any other initiative in any other state is kind of the same. Like, it's a small little group of people that sort of started this new little project, and like we are totally no resource, like but if one of us has a success or one of us has like a great policy or somebody's doing something right elsewhere, we should be cross-communicating and sharing that, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel here in Minnesota. If there's some school board in Texas that has done something fantastic and it's working for them, we should know that. So really, School Boards of Academic Excellence is a way that we in Minnesota can get connected with all the other state leaders that are doing similar work and make sure that we're kind of doing best practice sharing, but then also hiring, because there's like more funding available nationally than there is here in Minnesota. It's very tough to fundraise in Minnesota, but nationally you can find people that understand the value of these projects. And so we've been able to kind of, again, have a capacity build organization that like we can find legal assistance that way. A lot of our school board members, they get into situations where like their district attorney is not going to help them, and they need their own counsel to know, even like, hey, I want to pass this policy. Is this legal? Like, can I get somebody to look at this? They don't want to come out of pocket, obviously, to do that on their own, nor should they have to. So even having sort of like a legal hotline type thing for school board members to reach out and say, this is what I'm trying to achieve, have an attorney counsel me through this, or this is what's happening, my board is censuring me because I'm speaking out against something, or there's been all kinds of really ridiculous things that school board members, again, just feel really vulnerable to be like, I don't know, like there's the State School Board Association and they're telling me that I have to do it this way. Is there some other second opinion that I could get? So School Boards for Academic Excellence has been really fun to be part of, and I think will continue to grow, which is going to benefit Minnesotans as well. So again, we've broken into sort of two separate missions. Partnership for Achievement just formed within the last year, and so at the end of last year, we officially incorporated, and so this year is kind of our initial like launch year. All of the work that we do to educate and help people who are currently elected to school boards falls under Partnership for Achievement, because we're not doing anything political by nature. It's 501c3, like this isn't about elections or winning races or training candidates or any of that stuff. This is really just about helping elected leaders. And we hope, as we're growing, to continue relationships with legislators, because I know legislators are always looking for insight. What's going on at the local level? How can I partner with school board members to try to set state level policy that makes sense for our school districts? Obviously right now, the legislature has broken things. They need to fix them, but like there wasn't really a real opportunity at the time that they really passed a lot of the things that broke our school system, in my opinion, over the last 2 years, for our school board members who are newly elected and are still just trying to get their feet under them at the local level to have any sort of connectivity with what's going on in St. Paul. And so now all of a sudden they're stepping into this like, well, I've just been elected to my school board, but like St. Paul just kind of like sent us all these mandates and like our budget's a mess. They're walking into like a very challenging situation. And so I think the more that they can cooperate with legislators in St. Paul to try to get the train back on the track in terms of funding and other things will be helpful. So I think we'll grow into a little bit more of that. I know that it's very frustrating for me to see. I don't know how many people pay attention to like committee hearings. Like I'm kind of a nerd that way, so like I'll watch education policy and education finance committee hearings, and it is so frustrating to just see the same several kind of, you know, capital creatures or whatever giving testimony and, you know, standing and testifying for all the education related bills. And they're all the same organizations. They have paid lobbyists that are there. That's what they do, and I get that. But there aren't like citizen lobbyists there, ever. Like rarely, I shouldn't say ever, but very rarely are there, you know, just everyday citizens that are paying attention to what's going on, because there isn't really like a great watchdog organization on education policy. Like Center of the American Experiment does great work, and they will definitely put out the call to action when there's something like ethnic studies or there's some sort of like major thing that people need to be aware of, and they'll do these campaigns to like contact your legislator. But there really aren't citizens, again, that really feel like, I don't know if it's a lack, I'm trying to like put a finger on like, is it that they don't know how the process works? And I think that's a key piece of it. I think some people need to watch like the Schoolhouse Rock, like how does a bill become a law thing? You know, like a lot of people are very not aware of sort of what the mechanics are of how things move through the Capitol. But I think having people show up and just authentically say, I'm a resident or I'm a mom or whatever, and this is my opinion on this piece of legislation that you're discussing today in committee, is so valuable, because it's so different than what our legislators are typically hearing. It's like they get very used to the churn, and so I would like for Partnership for Achievement to also have a piece of helping people just be a citizen lobbyist, like be well educated. Hopefully we can help put eyes on bills as they come through and encourage people. Here's a great opportunity, like get to St. Paul, like the hearing is on Wednesday, free up your schedule and go give your 2 minutes of testimony on this piece of legislation that really will impact your local school district. So
Christine?
Yeah.
You might let them know that at the end of hearing all of the testimonies, they usually say, is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak?
Yes.
And so you can be prepared for that.
Yes, in case you didn't sign up on time. I mean, I know that I struggle sometimes where you don't know that something's gonna come up and all of a sudden you don't get much notice, and it's like, do you have time to like shape up your testimony and really think through your talking points and sign up and either, you know, testify in person or via Zoom or submit written testimony. There was a huge opportunity there for people to just submit written testimony. You don't have to go to St. Paul and actually speak, but even just sending that in advance so legislators can consider, hey, there's some perspectives here of like everyday people that are weighing in on these issues. I think having more visibility and participation in that process, I think, can only benefit Minnesota as well. So again, that is kind of our new initiative, and it's growing, but it is not a piece that is political in nature. So we're still sticking with Parents Alliance to do that campaign training and school board stuff. Here's kind of our vision. It's like a little bit corny maybe, but the 3 R's, you know, reading, writing, and arithmetic. We've kind of come up with like our vision to be reignite parents' interest. You know, parents need to know why this is important. So we're really trying to do the wake-up call of like, you have to get involved, and sort of reigniting that desire for them to want to do that, right? This is a huge opportunity. This is a golden opportunity, and it should be something that people are excited about. I really try to impart to people that like, this isn't so much like a battle to be fought and won, you know, I mean, I think like that's kind of a non-starter for people, to be honest. Like, yes, I realize it's sort of a battle, but it's like, nobody wants to like fight their friends and neighbors, or like, you know, parents on the sidelines at their kids' soccer game, or someone they're gonna run into at the grocery store, but like culture war issues. Like a lot of people are like, no, like that's not me, I don't wanna do that. But it's like, how about just getting involved for helping for the good of like your community and like something positive. This isn't like a battle to be fought and won. This is an opportunity to engage and make things better. We want to rebuild the trust piece again. I talked about that. I think, you know, parents and teachers have been kind of like in their own separate corners, and I think we need to get them back on the same team again. We know that that's the single most influential predictor of student success is a strong parent-teacher partnership, so we can't afford to have that continue to be severed or for trust to continue to be eroded in that department. Teachers are begging for that. Good teachers want that. So we want to make sure that there aren't policies that are being set at the district level that are eroding that trust or trying to somehow drive a wedge between parents and the school and teachers. And then I think we can return, this is like overly optimistic maybe, but I do think that we can return Minnesota's K-12 system to one of the best in the nation. I don't know like how many of you or your children have grown up going to school here, but like Minnesota has good bones in terms of like, we know how to do this. Like we had like a decently well-functioning public school system for years. And if you had friends that lived on the coast, you know, they would tell you, oh, you're crazy to send your kids to like private schools in Minnesota because your public schools are so good. That's not the case anymore. Like, we are declining, and so we can bring it back, but I do think that it is gonna take some more involvement. I think people realized we had good schools, and they were like, okay, great, like, I'll just send my kids there and kind of like check out and go like live my life, and it's like, that was a ripe opportunity for, in my opinion, some bad actors to get involved and take it in a different direction. So we need to kind of turn the ship in that way. So we're really focused on achievement. I know there's a lot of culture war issues and things like that, and you can't avoid it, it's there. So not saying not talk about it, but keep achievement at the top, because I think you can disagree on a lot of things and still agree that student achievement should be number one. It's the main focus of our schools. Safety is a close second these days. I'm sad to report that there are so many violent and disrupted buildings in the public school system. And the lack of accountability for how that's happening and why it's happening, and sort of some handcuffs that have been put on districts to be able to respond appropriately. So like, they can't dismiss children out of classes now. Like, there are non-exclusionary discipline laws that prevent districts from even doing simple things like recess detention or putting a kid out in the hall. I mean, they feel very hampered by a lot of the legislation at the state level, and then certainly there are kind of like equity initiatives and things that districts put on themselves about the way that they respond to incidents, how they do discipline at the district level. So that's a whole other piece, but it's really important to get it right, because there are too many parents that are just like worried about sending their kids to school because they don't know if their kid's gonna be involved in an incident that they're even gonna know. You know, candidly, a lot of parents are not even being told if their kid was either the aggressor or the victim. They just don't report it. And it's like, you know, they deal with it, they do sort of like sort of justice conversations or whatever with the kids and like kind of move on and sweep it under the rug. They're not always inconsistently reporting the incident, documenting it properly, getting the parents involved. Like, there's a lot of lag time between when a parent finds out that their kid was involved in something, which to me is unacceptable. We all have cell phones, like we all have email, like there should be no reason that there's even, you know, I know that recently this session they had been discussing what's a fair amount of time to let a parent know. It was an absurd conversation in my view, because it's like right now, like immediately, like call me, let me know. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know, like 24 hours. I mean, 24 hours was what they were talking about, being too aggressive. That's too short of a time. You know, we have busy days and these administrators don't always get around to it. And sometimes we have to do our own research on the issue before we bring it to the parents. And it's just like, no. So stuff like that, it would have been great to have more citizen lobbyists as part of that committee hearing to say, no, I'm a parent and I want to know right away, and there's no excuse why this district can't contact me if my kid has been assaulted at school or was, you know, the aggressor in some sort of an incident. Anyway, so the safety thing is a big deal. Post-secondary readiness is what this whole thing is about. Are our kids graduating with the skills that they need to achieve their dreams and succeed? Right now, I would say it's a coin flip. You know, we look at the stats, and I know this has been kind of like, you know, blasted out, where it's like, you know, less than 50% of kids in Minnesota are proficient at math and reading. What's their future? You know, and it's significantly lower for people of color and minority communities, lower income families. It's not even close to 50%. So you have to think about, you know, are we serving the mission? And so I like to equip our school board candidates and people who are serving on their school board to always come back to, are we delivering on the statutorily defined mission of public schools? The good news is that sometimes people fight about, like, what are schools for? They disagree on it. You know, some people think that schools are for shaping students and, you know, creating these agents of change that are kind of gonna like bring in this new sort of utopian society of equity and whatever.
That's
and
an
then
ideology.
some people
That's not academics.
That is not academics.
Ideology.
That is not. And so that's not what our public schools are for. And we know this because we can go to the mission, the statutorily defined mission of public schools in Minnesota. So say what you will about other laws on the books in Minnesota, but like our state statute spells it out. This is the mission of public schools. And I won't read the whole thing, but I will highlight that the first line of this is the mission of public education in Minnesota, a system for lifelong learning, is to ensure individual academic achievement. Highlight that, because that's number one. To have an informed citizenry and a highly productive workforce. Those are the top three things that the state of Minnesota says that public schools are for. Do we think that they're achieving those three top mission lines well? I don't think that that's their main focus right now. And it goes on to say, and I think this is the beauty of it, that they shall do that by cooperating with the students' parents or legal guardians. So it's right there. So we don't need to deliberate and debate and argue about, well, what are our public schools for? What should they be doing? What should they not be doing? It's right here. And when they raise your taxes and they tax you for public education, this is what they're telling you that they are going to be spending that money on, the mission of public schools. If they're dabbling in like healthcare, for example, which is definitely a big conversation that's being had about, you know, bringing healthcare into the building, doing more mental health and all of these other things, it's like we are drifting very far away from that top line then it's becoming something else. And that's fine, we can have that discussion, but then we need to stop calling it school. Then it's like a community resource center, and you need to be transparent with voters and taxpayers that this is what you're spending their money on. Because all of the things that are, you know, being funded through public education are really not achievement-related initiatives. They're not improving student outcomes. They are focused on adult agendas. So,
Cristine?
yeah.
I was on the education committee for 2 years, and never have I seen this before.
No one will ever tell you. No one will ever tell you. I think like, I know sometimes like districts, school districts do this. I think every organization should have like their mission statement like painted on the wall behind them, so that it's like you can always just like stay grounded and focused on like, this is what we're here to do. I know I come back to the mission statement of our organization all the time. When you make a decision, when you decide how you're gonna spend your money, what your messaging is gonna be, what you do or don't do in an organization, you have to say, is it mission related? Because if not, it's mission creep, and mission creep will destroy an organization. And people in the business community know that. You cannot stray from your mission or it will take down your organization. And like that is what's going on. So I think this should be in the hearts and minds of every legislator that is on an education committee or has any, decision making to do in education. And it should certainly be front of mind for our local leaders at the school board level. Go ahead.
I can assure you that that is not what we are seeing in Lakeville. And that we are beginning to put in a curriculum that is focused on social and emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion, intersectionality, ethnic studies.
Yes. Yes. So
That's what they are going to implement in the fall of '26, and they're starting to incorporate it this coming fall.
and all of those initiatives that you just listed cost time and money. There is a
We're gonna have
cost,
putting
and
it
there
all
is
in
an
the system.
opportunity cost when you focus on those things. There are only so many minutes of the day. There's only so many pennies in your district's budget. So it's just a priorities thing. It's how are we repointing all the resources that we have to try to get kids up to speed academically, to support them in achieving. And, I think that, again, it just gets so off track. And so when you listen to these school board meetings, it's interesting because we have a super dedicated person in the Hopkins community. Hopkins has gone from being actually like a blue ribbon school district that was recognized nationally like 30 years ago. Hopkins was like the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost the worst of the worst right now. I mean, it has tanked over the last couple decades. And so there's an individual who's like, I'm gonna listen to every school board meeting for a year. And so he like painstakingly went through, because they do record their meetings, he went through and he listened to the reels of all of these monthly school board meetings, just like 12 of them, several hours each. And he's like, I tracked it, and not once did they talk about achievement. In any of those meetings, they didn't even mention it once. So they're talking about all of these things. They're talking about equity initiatives. They're talking about building new facilities and all of these different like non-academic programs that they're gonna offer. And not once did they look at student achievement. I see here that like our numbers are going down. Like, let's get this figured out. Like, that is not their focus. So I think, again, just reminding people to continually come back. And if your board, your elected board, is not of that mind, then you should have citizens on the microphone at a public meeting raising that every time. Are we delivering on the mission of public schools here? I haven't heard this board talk about student achievement. You have to put the pressure on these elected leaders to be accountable to that. Because right now, like, there are very few people who even show up at school board meetings. Yeah. And Lakeville is a great example because recently they had this sort of like flashpoint thing where they had these signs that were, I mean, you know the story well probably, but for anyone in this room who doesn't, they had this poster series and they had students design these posters, and it was like, inclusion and equity and all these things. And so they had these kind of like nice sounding phrases or whatever about welcoming all students and making it a safe place for everybody. And then there were a few that were really in, sort of like, that one was, I think, a BLM sign or something like that.
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and so there were some that really took a very left-leaning political bent, and it was apparent, it was clear, it was overt. And anyway, there was a lawsuit that happened, and as a result of the lawsuit, the board was forced to kind of make a decision on this. It was like, we have to take these down because there's viewpoint discrimination. There was some other family in the district or student that was asking, well, can I post all lives matter, blue lives matter, or whatever, and the district said no. So that was what initiated the lawsuit. Anyway, the bottom line is the meeting where they decided we're taking these things down because like we have to, we're gonna get sued. It was just packed. I think it was like, you maybe were there, it was like standing room only, it's out the door. And then like the meeting where they actually talked about academic achievement, I think they had like a couple people in the seats. So it's just revealing that it's like people are making the schools become this just, hotbed of culture war issues. And like, that's what all the people care about are these posters on the wall. But when you're actually talking about like the meat of like what we're here to do, which is educate students, people are like, well, whatever. Like that doesn't bother me. I'm unbothered by our test scores, but I'm really bothered that there's this poster on the wall. So
Yeah.
I think just having leadership that's willing to bring it back and say, listen, like we can deal with sort of the, fringy noise of culture war stuff, but we're here to make sure that our number one priority is getting these test scores right. Go ahead.
I managed some apartments in Hopkins. The last meeting I was to about 3 years ago, 2 people showed up. The
Yeah.
first person says, I really respect you on the school board. You've been doing a real good job. And then she went on to say what she really wanted to say after she complimented them. And of course, I got up and I spoke about what's happening in the school board, how non-pro-life people are not allowed to speak up. They've got one gal there that I think was in the 10th or 11th grade. She attends all of the promoting Planned Parenthood, and that was her big thing all the way through.
Yeah.
But they would not let anybody speak about the pro-life at all.
I am not surprised to hear that. It's also, I'm glad you brought that up, just if only because people need to be aware of how much partnership is going on between school districts and non-governmental organizations like Planned Parenthood. There are a variety of others. So the level of cooperation that's happening between NGOs and our school districts, it would, I think, blow people's minds. And so if you're in the building, you'll see it, because like there are posters and signage and stuff. Like Planned Parenthood has posters all over our schools, and like the Trevor Project in Elfront, Minnesota, and like all of these sort of like ideologically driven NGOs advertise either their services or their clubs or different things that they sponsor. It's everywhere. And I also know that there are activist teachers that utilize the material that these non-governmental organizations put out as supplemental curriculum and introduce that in the classroom. So for example, there was a teacher that was in like, I think it was like a 10th grade literature class. The assignment was to look at the resources from, I'm gonna get it wrong, but it was sort of an LGBTQIA plus organization advocating for rights or whatever, and something that was like very askew from, centrist anything. And that was like the foundation of the assignment that these kids were to do. It was like, okay, like look through this material and then write on this content. And that should have never been in the classroom. Nobody's vetted it, nobody looked at it. The curriculum committee sure didn't see it, and maybe if they did, they would have approved it, who knows? But like, the bottom line is teachers for sure, or, parents rather, did not know that their kids were getting this resource. So again, kids will share with their parents, like, here's a snapshot of what I'm looking at on my desk today, and it's from this, organization that has no business really being in our public school buildings. And that goes on both sides. I mean, I think you have to accept that it's like, we just have to kind of be okay with, it doesn't matter what the views are, none of them belong there. Like, we should have a process that's consistent and it's fair and it's transparent for approving curriculum. And everybody should be able to see, supplemental resources, and letting teachers really go off script is just, really vulnerable to abuse by activists.
Yeah.
So we just have to safeguard that piece as much as possible, because curriculum is a really big deal. So to go back to this again, and again, it's spelled out in our Minnesota state constitution, like this is the public education, or this is the state's legal responsibility. So again, there's just really should not be any disagreement about what public schools are for, and that it is our responsibility to get this right for our K-12 students. So again, just going back to our values, the accountability piece is huge. Adults have to be accountable for these outcomes. And so when you have 6 or 7 people sitting on your school board, that's their accountability. If the children in that district are not thriving and not achieving at the level that they can achieve, it is on them. It is on those 6 or 7 people, and that is what you sign up for when you want to run for school board and serve. It's up to you, and I think a lot of times there's sort of this upside down model of governance where the school board is really deferent to the superintendent. And it's just like, all right, well, we hired the superintendent, we're gonna like let this person run the show. Okay, but if that person is taking your district in a different direction than what your community is asking for, then you have a problem. That's a management issue. And so it is the school board's job to superintend and manage the district. And again, our state statutes spell out the responsibilities of the school board as well. And I don't think I have it in this slide deck, but there's very specific language about the school board's authority to superintend and manage the district. If they decide to delegate that authority out to their superintendent or other staff members, that is up to them. They can do that. But my view on it and sort of our organization's perspective is you ought not do that too often. Don't make a habit of delegating out your state-defined authority, because then what ends up happening is, you know, currently the way that our laws are written, the school board is in charge of or has oversight over curriculum, for example. Now the school board can say, well, we're gonna let all the curriculum decisions run through this teaching and learning specialist that we've hired, an administrative position that we're paying somebody to do. And we're just gonna defer to them because they're the experts. They have their, you know, education, master's or PhD or whatever, and like, we're just gonna let them make those decisions. We'll listen to whatever they say. But at the end of the day, those school board members are still accountable for that. So if the person that they hired is not making good decisions, or the content that they're selecting is not helping students achieve, it is the school board's job to rein that in and say, okay, there's an accountability piece here. Like, obviously what you're doing isn't working, so we either need to change it or we need to find somebody else to do this job. And that's tough, but like that's like business owners or people that work in the private sector know that that's the way that it needs to work. It is the board's responsibility to make sure, I mean, like the superintendent is really the district's like CEO. You've hired this person to like run your organization, and if they're not doing it well, you have to find somebody else who will. So that accountability piece is huge. We talked about transparency, another big thing. I can't for the life of me, well, I know why, but like it would be so simple for every district in the state, every single one of them has a website, to just have a little dashboard. And when you go to the website, it just has some kind of like vitals, right? Your district's vital signs. You know, how are kids doing in math and reading? What's our enrollment like? How many kids are graduating? Just some basic stats, just a snapshot, right? Because that, again, brings some accountability. It lets people know when they're shopping for a school district, like, here's where we're sitting. This is, you know, these are the numbers. I know that a lot of people say that they will I get this all the time. I live in a district that's very proud of being in like the top 10 rated schools in the state, or they do the best on, you know, standardized testing and things like that. But it's like, they have a marketing department, okay? And like, they send out a postcard, like getting people to feel excited and proud of their district. So they'll say like, we're great, we're doing so, you know, fantastic. And like, here's like a picture of one of our graduates, and they just won this award for some sort of academic thing, and like, we're awesome. But there's a lot that they don't tell you because they're marketing to you, because in November, they're gonna ask you to approve a referendum or a levy, and they want you to feel like you're supporting something that's good. The fact is that a lot of the districts, and I've seen sort of the disparate facts of like, I've seen the postcard that gets sent, and then I'll go to like MDE's website and pull up what the test scores are. It's sometimes very different, or you have to recognize that, again, I feel this way because I live in a district that, you know, is outperforming other districts, but it's a pretty low bar, like even like the top performers, right? And I think I have a slide that goes into this more, but even some of our suburban areas that really pride themselves on being one of the, you know, top districts in the state to move to, people move there for the schools, and their real estate values reflect being in like a top school district. I don't know, like if 1 out of 4 kids can't read at grade level, like is that anything to be proud of? And that's the top of the top. Like, I would say you will never find a school district in the state of Minnesota that has above that percentage. I think 75 is probably at the top level, which means 1 out of 4, right? So 1 out of 4 kids are not reading at grade level. That is nothing to be proud of. Like, we can do better. We have to do better. We have to do better for that 25% that is gonna graduate out with, you know, not the skills that they need. I recently was talking to somebody who owns a temporary placement service. So they seek to hire kids who just graduated that aren't, you know, university material, they're not ready to go yet, they're just looking for like kind of a part-time temporary, like minimum wage type job. And he was telling me that they've had to change the job descriptions when they, you know, are trying to tell people what is offered, from written form to pictogram form because of the high illiteracy rate coming out of our 12th graders. And it's like, wait a minute, like, really? I mean, if all of this money, all of this, you know, the resources that we're plugging into our public schools, ostensibly, so that that doesn't happen, so we don't have illiterate 12th graders, if businesses are having to, like, you know, reconfigure the ways that they are communicating with their employees or potential employees, or having to do all of this on-the-job training of just like basic things that these kids should have picked up in their K through 12 experience, that's now a problem for our business community. They're like, this, you know, we pay a lot in taxes to be here, and like if we have to like spend all of this additional time and money training, you know, kind of basic level employees, like that doesn't work for them. So we've definitely had some support from the business community too. They realize why this is important. So here's our strategy. We kind of, like, I look at this as like 3 different kind of buckets of what we do, and one of them is parents, so organizing and trying to equip those parent groups. There's some communities that just haven't really dialed in. Anoka Hennepin is one of the great examples. They have a parent group that is so fantastic. So they call themselves, you know, Anoka Hennepin Parents Alliance. It's not a requirement that they call themselves Parents Alliance, but they happen to. There's one in Bloomington that calls themselves Bloomington Parents Alliance. But it is a group of parents and community members that are committed to kind of having their own little kind of almost like monthly meetings. Usually they'll have like a standing monthly meeting where it's like a date with the community, kind of like we meet every Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the community center. We're here to talk about education and achievement. If you care about those things, join us. And they will have teachers sometimes come their way. They will have other people in the community that are sort of awakening to the fact that their district needs some support. And so that group has grown, the Anoka group has grown quite a bit, and they ended up just being a machine of support behind school board candidates that ran in 2023. You know, and so just for context, I mean, again, it's the biggest district in the state of Minnesota. They had one gentleman who won his race as kind of the lone wolf in 2021 when everything was just very heated and people were running on like, you know, CRT and parental rights and some of these like culture war things. He won his race and he was the lone wolf on that board, but he showed up every month ready, asking questions. Like, he knew he didn't have the votes to get anything done. He couldn't put anything on an agenda. Like, the other board members were not willing to work with him, and they made it very clear that they did not like him. But every month, consistently, he's just like, I'm just like the common sense person that's like, wait a minute, can I just ask some questions here? Because these are the questions that our community has about either this budget or some of the choices that we're making. And the community was like, this guy knows what he's doing, and like, we need more of this. Like, you know, where are more candidates that are like this guy that we can put on the board? So we kind of call, his name is Matt Audette. We call it the Matt Audette effect, because if you can just get one person on the board to serve well, people know good leadership when they see it. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, like this can look and sound a lot differently if we start putting people in the seats that are actually doing their homework and are not just rubber stamps. They're not just here to slam dunk an agenda that our superintendent has, or, you know, are listening to some of these like really terrible trends in education. But they're really looking at it as like they're running a business. I mean, Matt happens to come out of sort of like the business financial realm, but that's not essential, it's not requisite. But anyway, so that community really rallied behind him. He actually had like people coming to the school board that like had shirts or something that supported him. I mean, they were like jazzed that they finally had this person that was like, yes, this person cares. So they found some more people to run that next cycle in 2023. They had 3 seats that were available that cycle, and of the 3, 2 of them won their race. So that brought the Anoka Hennepin board to a split. Unfortunately, they have 6. I do not like it when districts do this, but districts can have 6 or 7. Some of them have 5, very few have 5, but 6 or 7 members is the common thing, and most of them have 7, but quite a few still have 6. And 6 provides an opportunity for a split vote. So they ended up sort of bumping heads and consistently coming to this sort of stalemate thing. And when they were trying to pass their budget and doing some negotiation around that, I mean, it was really hard because they just couldn't agree. And right now they have this shared model of leadership, which is like co-chairs on the board. Not common, not something I've seen done really anywhere else. So like they switch, I kind of forget the exact like terms of their agreement, but it's like every other meeting, you know, one or the other person who kind of represents 2 sides. They had like sort of like the teacher union supported people, and then they had like our kind of like challenger candidates. And so that's kind of like the break of the 3 and 3. And so it's like achievement focused and union focused, whatever, however you want to define those 3. But they kind of alternate, and it's slow progress because, as you might imagine, I mean, like, it's really hard to kind of make inroads there. But the good news is they have another election this year, so now they're up again, and they will have 3 seats up for election. It'll probably be the same kind of matchup. It'll be like union endorsed candidates versus, like, challenger candidates. We already know what the matchup kind of looks like right now, I think, and so they have an opportunity to flip the board, though, because all they need to do is hold on to that one person now who's up for re-election, who I think has a great chance of winning, because I think his community really loves him, and gain one more seat. And they know how to do this now because they have this, like, powerhouse parent group that's, like, they've been doing the campaigns. Like, they know all the tricks of the trade of door knocking and voter contact and all the things that they need to do. So it's really exciting to see that whole momentum happen over just 4 years. It was from 2021, one guy just thought he could, make a difference, and he felt really called to run and win, to now where it's like you're almost looking at like a flip for the biggest school district in the state of Minnesota. Like, wow, what an amazing feat that is. So, and it is 100% credit to the parents and the community members that live in that district who saw how important this is and really invested. I mean, the amount of time that these individuals have put into running this parent group, doing all the campaign piece of trying to make sure that these additional 2 people got elected in the 2023 cycle. They've worked incredibly hard, and they are vigilant about the school board, agenda. Every month they're watching, what's coming up. They make sure that if there is something to debate or have, an opinion on, that they have people that will come and give public comment and support those school board members in making the right decisions. So it's been super fun to watch, and other districts have really used that as a model of, we want something like that. We want a really consistent core group of people that care about our schools enough to have these monthly meetings and to grow it over time. The teachers in that district are so thankful that this group exists because, like, I don't think their union is really always advocating for their best interests. And the teachers are crying out for help. A lot of these great teachers are just hanging on because they are overburdened with all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with teaching kids, are like, throw me a life ring here. Like, we are doing the best we can in a really challenging situation. So when they hear parents, community members, and the school board candidates that then become school board members that are advocating for them, they're like, thank you. Somebody is trying to speak sanity into these issues, particularly around, like, the classroom management stuff. I mean, teachers are just struggling if they can't bring their classroom under control because they're, again, sort of confined to some of these ridiculous state mandates or district policies, whether they're codified in policy or they're just kind of like the practice or whatever. These teachers can't do their job, and it is heartbreaking to hear the teachers who have been assaulted, like physically assaulted by students.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if we can't draw a line at that, I don't know that there's any hope for people. And, like, truly, there's a group of teachers who for years have been advocating for safer schools and legislation, both at the state and federal level, about safe schools and keeping teachers safe in that environment. And I went with several of them to meet with some state level legislators after the last legislative period where they had passed this non-exclusionary discipline practice where you can't take violent or disruptive kids out of your classroom. And the norm now is, and I'll give you a crazy statistic, in the Anoka-Hennepin district, just this past year, they have had 390 occasions where the classrooms have had to be cleared, which means, for those who don't know, teachers can't remove violent or disruptive kids. They have to let those kids be violent and disrupt, and their job is to get themselves and the rest of the class out.
Yeah.
So the rest of the class goes out into the hall, they clear the classroom, and let the one kid who's acting out be in that classroom alone until they can figure out some other thing.
Well, and we've normalized kids that have fairly significant issues, autistic issues and so on, and they are in the classes as well, which my heart goes out to those kids.
It is so
but
challenging.
we are protecting the one kid against the 99 that are normal that want to learn, and the academics are going down.
Yes.
We have kids that are in second year Spanish class getting an A, and they couldn't go into a Taco Bell and order a meal in Spanish. So there's
lowering
just
of
so
standards
much
is
going on that
concerning.
we have to correct.
Yeah, the lowering of standards is like a whole other piece, but whether
And I
you're
wouldn't-
talking about conduct, student conduct, there has been a lowering of standards of what is and is not acceptable,
Oh,
and that also
unacceptable.
translates into academically. I can say a lot about standards-based grading, or grading for equity is sometimes what you'll hear
Oh,
the
yeah, no.
terminology. Which is sort of the philosophy that, you know, you can't fail students, you can't give them a 0. If they don't wanna take a test, you just let them take it some other time when they're ready. You can't get below a 50%. I mean, there are all of these different, you know, things that they try under sort of the idea that, well, if you just kind of keep them engaged, like, because otherwise the thought is, well, if kids just get a 0, then they're just gonna stop trying, they don't care. So we gotta kind of like keep giving them a leg up, give them another opportunity, give them another chance. The reality is, are we setting these kids up to be adults? Because
No.
at some point, the real world, the adult world, doesn't function that way. Like, you don't get infinite amounts of chances and second tries and whatever, and there are deadlines that adults have to meet in the real world. So you're not giving them a training ground to be accountable for those things, and to just understand that they need to manage their time, and they need to accept that, you know what, yeah, you didn't study and you got a 0, and like that stands. Like, we're not gonna, you know, yes, we should be coming alongside them to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I think that what happens is, because kids are smart, the high flyer kids and like the normal kind of performing kids are like, what? I tried, like I studied. And so you're disincentivizing the kids who are really trying, because they're like, it doesn't really matter, because like I'm not gonna get a 0. Like, you know, I mean, it's a very slippery slope. And so sort of this, you know, kind of war on merits is a term that gets thrown around, where it's like, yeah, I mean, if you are disincentivizing the best and the brightest, and you are consistently enabling low performing kids, who are we serving? Because you're not serving the high flyers, and you're not serving like the low level kids anymore, and the kids in the middle are just kind of stagnating. So when we talk about you know, our kids performing well, I think it needs to go beyond just proficiency scores, and it needs to be growth scores. You know, I mean, some kids are never going to be a high score, you know, they're not going to score high on tests, they just aren't, and they're trying and they just aren't. But are they growing over time? Are they making incremental progress? And the same is true for the high flyer kids. Are they being challenged? Because if you have a kid who always gets straight A's, they're not being challenged. Like, they're not getting that next level that they need to accelerate. And so, you know, we can talk a lot about sort of different philosophies on grading and instruction, and how do you differentiate education, because they, you know, I will say, I homeschool my 3 kids, and I'm like, this is challenging to meet them where they are. Imagine if you have 25 of them, and they all have different needs, and you're trying to kind of keep everybody basically rowing in the same direction at the same level, but also trying to challenge the kids who need more, and slowing it down for the kids who, you know, I mean, we need more support in our schools. I think that it's so important, the paras and different you know, aides that are in the classroom to help students get up to speed. The gifted and talented programs, I know they call them a variety of different things in different districts, are still really important for those kids, again, who need the extra challenge. And candidly, you know, one of these teachers was telling me at this, Anoka Hennepin had a teacher panel, and one of them had shared, you know, listen, families, like, if you have a student who's like a reasonable student, and he or she is basically, you know, kind of making decent marks and trying and showing up, and or you have a high flyer, we will never be working with them, just so you know. Like, we are so focused on dealing with the kids who are just struggling to even be in the classroom, that like, your kid who's doing okay is never gonna get any of our attention or time. And that is so unfair to them, because we are missing out on cultivating the best and brightest 18-year-olds graduating out of our K-12 system. Like, our country relies on that. And so if we just have our smartest kids just kind of like limping along and like self-teaching, I mean, like, well, I don't know, like, our teachers like are so busy dealing with all of this other stuff that I'm not being met where I need to be, that's not good either. So definitely a lot of conversations about what is the best thing. You know, mainstreaming everybody all the time is not good for anyone. And I think sometimes, I've talked to a parent one time that she was saying that, you know, she is the parent of a student who can't control their emotions. They've disrupted classrooms. They're having these, you know, really awful kind of outbursts in the class, and they are forced to play that out in front of their peers. They just like, you know, and she's like, that's cruel. Like, my child needs to be pulled out. I want my child to be removed out of that situation, so they're not just left to kind of enact all these, you know, emotional breakdown, you know, behaviors or whatever in front of their peers. Their peers start resenting them. You know, I mean, it's not good for that child either, always, to be in that situation. Pull them out, let them reset and recalibrate, get a strategy. Yes, the goal should be to bring them back in eventually, You know, you're not trying to like suspend or expel them for forever, but just, you know, there's a difference between fully expelling a student and then just like pulling them out and saying, you know, we need to regroup, we need to get the parents involved here and come up with a plan on how we're gonna get this kid back on track. So anyway, that is that, but that's the parent group stuff. Candidates, you know, different, training candidates and educating voters is sort of our other piece, and then the leadership part, which is what we talked about. I mean, I think again, you cannot let these people who just won a school board race, you can't leave them hanging, because they probably won't run again. If they feel discouraged off the bat because it's like, I worked so hard to get elected, I did all the things that, you know, I was trained to do to win this election, and now I'm in this seat and I feel like I can't be effective at all because I got a bunch of people telling me that like I'm actually just kind of a rubber stamp, I shouldn't even really be doing anything anyway, like why am I here? What is this for? You need to help empower people who are in those seats to actually deliver on their campaign promises. And I think a lot of times they don't know what to do. They want to do it, but they just don't know how to do it. And sometimes it can be as simple as like Robert's rules. Like who knows parliamentary procedure? Like the average person does not know that. And so when they're trying to just even navigate in meetings, they're trying to get their point across, the rules exist so that minority members can participate. Like that's a big piece of why we have procedural rules. And if a member does not know how to utilize those rules to their advantage, to either get their point across or get a second on a motion, I mean, there's all of these different sort of little techniques that they can use to try to advance the points that they want to bring forward, which again are typically rooted in either student achievement and or financial accountability. So we help them do that as well, and in cooperation with this new group that we have sort of incubated at the national level, you know, there's just a lot of opportunity there. I think that there are so many people that are elected leaders that just, they could be better, they just don't know how.
Back to parents groups. Back in the 90s, we were in South Minneapolis, and two of us kind of took over the Republican Party. And
that's bold.
yeah, we got rid of the Planned Parenthood people just in one election. But the few people that we had each of them get the list of people in their church, and we took that list and we built solid Republicans out of those, so that eventually we had meetings every single month, and we would have between 30 to 40 people out. And I'm thinking we could do the same thing that you're talking about within, we've been working with the Robbinsdale for 3 years.
Oh, Robbinsdale, they need it.
Yeah.
They so need it. There is a little core group of people that, again, want to initiate, get some traction going there, but they are in a district, and there are some that it's like you almost look at it like, is this beyond repair? Has this gone in such a crazy direction? I mean, their financial situation is a mess. You know, is this fixable? And I am an optimist, so I always think that there's something you can do. I don't think that the answer is abandon a district and let it fall into decline and be taken over. Like, I mean, they're gonna be in, you know, statutory operating debt and be taken over. Like, that's not good for anyone. But, you know, there are districts in Minneapolis struggles. Obviously, Robbinsdale is one that financially is in a tough place right now.
The other thing, one of them told me that his church has never told him, never have talked about what's going on in the school boards, and they ended up with one of their kids is just totally doesn't respond at all. They went down to the school, and they have 17 schools, and 2 of them were high school, and there's graffiti all over the place, and they could see why their kid had just gone totally against everything that they had. But he said the church never told us anything that's going on.
There's some good news that I think over the last, I've noticed for sure the last year and maybe a little bit longer, there are communities of churches that have decided that this is, I mean, man, if there's a mission field, it's public education, let me tell you. Like, and I think that what's really hard is there's so many people, specifically, like, I'm a Christian, so I feel like that's what I know, and I don't know that that's not, I mean, maybe other faiths do this as well, but I feel like, you know, watching Christian communities incubate church-based learning centers, empowering homeschool families, starting private, you know, low-cost private academies, all great things, and they should do like that in states many more times over. Like, that's important too. However, abandoning, again, what comes out to be close to 85-90% of our young people because you're just fed up with what's going on, you're just throwing them to the wolves. Like, I mean, really, a lot of times I think if you look at these kids that are just in an incubator of ideological chaos, like they don't maybe have a family that's really trying. I mean, I have heard enough from families that have really tried to steer their children, you know, in the way that their family's culture is, but like the just ambient noise that these kids are in this pressure cooker all day long, it's tough. It is really hard if you're a middle school or a high school or even poor little elementary school kids. You know, it's like they're constantly getting this barrage of, you know, ideological messaging at them. And that's just, you look at how much time the kids are baked in that and how much time they're spending at home with their families. Kids spend more hours of their waking lives in public education than they do at home in a lot of situations. And so, you know, you look at the before care, the after school activities, how many families are actually spending really focused time together, and how much of that time is really rooted in anything that has to do with like shaping, you know, character and values and things like that. You know, it may just be like, we're just trying to survive, get dinner on the table, get kids to activities and like call it a day. And we're gonna do the same thing over and over again. And so anyway, I think that we cannot abandon public education. It has been so encouraging to see faith-based communities decide that this is something that they want to engage in, and there are different ways that I've seen it done. One thing for the Christian communities are the breakfast clubs. I don't know if anyone has seen these pop up. Breakfast clubs
every other Friday.
I think one of the like original ones was in like St. Michael, Albertville, and it basically was like a family that lived really close to the high school, and they decided that they were going to have like this before school kind of like Bible study thing for high school students, and they would like make them breakfast and do their Bible study before the kids went off to class, and they would always, you know, invite a friend, bring a friend. Well, it grew, and then they like got this pop-up tent and they put it in their driveway to just like accommodate all these kids that were coming, and it kept growing and growing, and they realized like, we're gonna need a bigger facility here. Like, this is great, what a good problem to have. And you know, definitely a God thing that the person across the way that owned the property that was adjacent to the high school was a Christian, and he's like, it's yours, take the property, we'll find there were some contractors that kind of came together to build this building, and it is for this purpose. And so it's like this beautiful event space. It's kind of like a rustic barn looking thing, and they facilitate this breakfast club. And so they have this just massive group of high school students that come and, you know, get fed actually, and then spiritually fed before they go off to school. And it's like, that's great. And it's not part of the school district. It's not like sanctioned by the schools, but it is adjacent to their school day. So that's like one avenue where it's like, it doesn't have to operate within public schools, but it can be adjacent to public schools. And, you know, you give stuff, you give like, you know, something good to kids, they want more of it, you know, like they can tell, like they're hungry for that, obviously, like those kids want to be there. So that's one avenue. And then I think there's also a group called the Compass Ministry Group, and they're based out of the Grace Church in Eden Prairie. And their ministry is to help anybody who is in the public school space, whether they are an employee of the public schools or they're a public school family, anybody who has kind of connectivity in public schools, kind of be the salt and light where they are. Because again, these people feel called to say, I'm not gonna like, if I'm a teacher, I'm not gonna get a different job and run away from the public schools. I feel like it's like important for me to be here. These kids need more strong, you know, Christian adults around them in whatever capacity, and they're not trying to like evangelize the students in an open way at all, but they're there, like they have a foothold there. And so I think that you know, their whole mission, view, and values is just praying and caring for the people that are in our public communities, and like there's a ton of value in that. And so we've, you know, connected and you know, again, equipping people to feel if they're called to be in that space, how can you be more involved? How can you serve on committees? How can you be more engaged with what's going on in the district? And you don't have to do it like you're, you know, trying to put Bibles on every desk necessarily, but if you're a trusted adult that has relationship with students and they can see that you're offering them, you know, something that maybe has some more goodness to it than what they're being offered in these other avenues of, you know, other NGOs and other things that are coming into the districts, like again, kids can kind of tell, like they feel nudged, I think, to lean into that, which I think is great. But again, it's, you know, it's a secular space, and so there's only so much that, you know, faith-based groups and organizations and leaders can do, except for to be there, just be there, be in the room. Because I think we just, you know, whether you're talking about people at the Capitol or people at, you know, local governance, just have more people of faith be in those places, I think can only lead to good things. Go ahead.
Have you heard, you know, Turning Point USA is on college campuses.
Mhm.
They are actually targeting high schools now,
Yeah,
and there is a state person
yes.
in Minnesota.
Yeah, he's great. They've had a little bit of turnover, but there are a few chapters that had been incubated over the last few years. I think it's I know that it's challenging, and I've talked to their leaders, their chapter organizers. There's turnover among the chapter organizers because they're like young people that are college students, and then they, it's kind of like their first job or something, that they're being like a kind of an organizer of these chapters. And then the high school students themselves, there's turnover because there's like a really small window of time that they would, be the chapter leader or something. So I think they struggle to kind of maintain some longevity, but I know that I think White Bear Lake has a chapter. There were a couple other districts throughout the metro, but it's only as kind of strong and good as the students that are gonna lead it, and then kind of pass the torch on to the freshmen or the next kids that are gonna kind of continue the group. And you also have to have a staff member, some teacher or person that will be kind of not a sponsor, I forget what the term is, but they have to kind of be the facilitator or be willing to help that group come forward. So totally fine. Those things are all really good, and I know that LifeWise Academy is another kind of initiative. I have a little bit of a mixed feeling on it because the LifeWise Academies pull kids out of school. So they have buses and transportation that take kids off campus, and they do faith-based education off campus. And there is a law on the books that this is allowed. That this can happen. You can take kids out of school for, I forget if it's 3 hours out of the week or something, for faith-based education. And so this organization, LifeWise Academy, you can write it down. I mean, I think South Wash County just launched their initiative. I think there are a couple other districts that already have started this. People don't love it because it's taking kids out of instructional time. And so kind of the argument is, okay, well, the kids are already, behind in many respects academically, should we be busing them off site to do kind of faith-based instruction, Bible studies type content, and then bringing them back? It's, disruptive, but it's also taking away, again, more of these valuable hours of the day that we should be educating kids. However, I think the argument of the LifeWise people is they're going to be getting a lot of non-academic education during those times, so we may as well utilize that time to be giving them something that is aligned culturally and religiously with their family's values. So I understand both sides. Go ahead.
Just as an aside, I don't know if some of the people that I know in here know this, but in the Lakeville School District, they allow the Muslim kids to have their prayer time, and they are allowed to leave class at the designated time multiple times per day. And if they're going to allow that, then maybe they should just allow this right in the school system.
Yeah, I think that's sort of been the argument or whatever as well. It seems that they are accommodating other religions, and how are you not engaging in discrimination then when it comes to making it equal for everyone? Do we need, prayer rooms for Christian kids and Jewish kids, and I mean the whole gamut? It's kind of tough. I'm gonna flip through this really quick because I just realized we've been having a big discussion. I thought I was gonna get through my deck really quickly. So anyway, I think our work matters because this is a bench builder, to be honest. I feel like watching these people lead at the local level and really get their legs underneath them, we need better candidates up ballot, and so it is a fantastic opportunity for people who kind of cut their teeth and get experience at the local level, campaigning and serving, to be tapped sometime, because I think that our state legislature is going to need more people to come forward. So I think it's great for that reason as well. Here's kind of our roadmap, and we sort of talked about the history of our organization and kind of where we are now. And then the good news is truly the leadership piece is important, because now this year the districts have their organizational meeting at the beginning of the year where they elect who's going to be the board chair, vice chair, etc. And 40 out of the 180 people in our leadership network were elected to chair or vice chair roles. So they're not just on the school board, but they are leading the school board. We had 15 districts flip the composition of their school board to an achievement-focused majority. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity. Lakeville was one of them that they can really start delivering changes, I think, once they start gaining those seats and gaining leadership roles. And again, we've kind of gone through some of this, so I'm gonna just kind of skip over. The other player in the space here is Education Minnesota. They're our state teachers union. There's a big difference between, in my opinion, state level teachers union politics and local level unions. teachers more or less just want to teach. A lot of them just are like, I'm a good teacher, I just want to like be in the union because I feel like number one, I'm going to get bullied if I'm not, number two, I just like need insurance, and they just kind of like don't really consider it ever as like I should be opting out because I don't like their politics or whatever. That's a whole other conversation, but the bottom line is Education Minnesota has bottomless resources. The Education Minnesota entity and the DFL are like one and the same at this point. I see very little distinction between both of those organizations. So if you're going to run for school board on a challenger platform and you're not going to get their endorsement and you're running against them, you will be painted as a far right conservative Christian extremist, whether you are or not, because that is like you are the other to what they are. They are far left. 100%. I mean, you can look at their, social media and the things that they put out, and like it is about as far left as you can go. So politically, if they're far left and you're running against them, you're going to get defined as being just like the opposition of what they are. They sunk about $500,000 into school board races in 2023, which was like an odd cycle year. So again, they have a ton of money, and the good news is, like last year, we spent $30,000 statewide, and I will do that all day long. If I can spend $30,000 to force Education Minnesota to spend $500,000 defeating us and trying to keep parents off of school boards, great. I mean, we had a lot of success, and so we definitely won seats. But I think regardless of what the outcome is, forcing them to have to fight us for these seats is like a good thing for the community to see. Like, look at how hard they will fight to keep parents off of school boards. And like, what does that tell you? I tell kids or parents this all the time, that like, they're going to fight really hard for your kids and for your tax dollars. Are you going to? I mean, that's the challenge really, is it's just like they are happy to fight for these seats and have control over your children and your money. So you have to, I think, understand that and feel that, there's an opportunity here. This is our voter guide. There's a bunch of stats here on, I think we've promoted it really well. And again, it's become kind of a brand now that people can look toward. It's website based, so you can go to minnesotaparents.org and get that link. Every year we will be putting it out again this August. We advertise it in a variety of ways. You can see some of our like digital campaigns. In 2023, we did engage in a little bit of independent expenditure in the sense that we've sent out like mailers in districts where we felt like had a good opportunity. These are some of the mailer pieces that we had sent out promoting our endorsed candidates. Those are our candidates in Hastings that we supported. Again, it's an educational piece. Some people just needed to be reminded that you got to get out to the ballot or out to the polls in November on an off-cycle year. Hastings flipped their school board to a parent-centered majority, so they're currently working with just a really solid group of people that are trying to deliver the change that their community voted for. Here's another kind of sample mailer of some of the messaging that we had put out. We try to keep it positive. I know that a lot of the kind of independent expenditures can get really smeary and negative, and kind of we've seen it obviously in legislative and congressional races and stuff. They can just get kind of unfairly nasty, I think, but we try to just keep it really positive, and just let people know. Again, it's a voter education thing. Some people just need to be reminded of who to go vote for. These are more stats about our candidate training, and then the other thing is we really try to cooperate with as many other groups in sort of the K-12 space that care about these issues that we do. So we've really tried to partner with not just organizations that are state-based, but also national organizations. And not that we work together all the time on everything, but we definitely have a solid group of people that are in alignment with our philosophy that our schools really need to get back to focusing on achievement. So we've also been in the media. It's nice to have a voice for Minnesota in the media. I feel like there hasn't really ever been a group that's K-12 focused that journalists can go to for comment. It's basically like Education Minnesota or nothing. So it's been nice to offer, sort of a counterpoint to some of the issues that have been raised. Certainly this year when Tim Walz was picked as the VP, we got contacted right away to talk about his track record for K-12 education in Minnesota, and I was all but happy to talk to them about what a terrible influence he's had over our public education system. So it's nice to either be at the Capitol or be on the news representing parents in Minnesota. And again, we've been able to, I think, catch the attention of some national partners, and so we have created this model for other states as well. School Boards for Academic Excellence is the name of the group, and I basically think at this point, this is an old slide, but I think we have some sort of a foothold in all 50 states now of people who are just focused. This is not a political thing. This is just focusing on people who are elected leaders, helping them to lead better at the local level, and school boards specifically. We're also providing first aid kits, which is a resource that a woman who really tracked a lot of what was going on legislatively with K-12 education partnered up with somebody who has a deep skill set in data and like getting data and kind of making, graphs that make sense to people. He scraped all of Minnesota Department of Education's publicly facing data on everything from enrollment to spending to you name it. And they've kind of compiled all of this into a district-specific resource. So you can get, I wish I brought it with me, it's a manual, basically like the user's manual for your district. So I could give you one for Lakeville, and it's like everything you need to know about Lakeville. So it has all of their, kind of stats and information, but then it's like chapter by chapter. I think there are like 10 to 12 chapters on issues. So it's like, here's everything you need to know about gender stuff in Lakeville, right? Like here are all the policies that govern it, and then it walks them through. It's almost like workbook style. These are the questions that you should start asking. This is like kind of the people that are currently making decisions on this. These are the ways that you can start trying to influence change over that topic. So it's a phenomenal resource. They're not cheap, but we have subsidized that for parent groups that have come together that I think really just need that sort of anchor piece. So we've given it out to, I think, about 12 different sort of parent groups that have incubated, and we're kind of testing this out to see if that's like a good resource to try to keep those people just really well informed. I mean, we want people that are reflecting our organization and our mission to be very well informed and also very constructive in their approach. They're coming with the facts, they're not coming to fight, but they are presenting either their local leaders or administration with some facts and asking the right questions to try to deliver change. So we do a few different things. We have an annual leadership conference, and we have a partner summit that we just had in February. We have a 5-part learning to leading series, which is like our onboarding series. We basically try to get in front of people as soon as they get elected. We invite them to our leadership conference, and we provide them this online sort of series of how to be a strong leader from the get-go. We have a first 100 days in office kind of strategy plan that we can give them that they can start executing on right away. Because I think otherwise what happens is they first get elected and they're like drinking from a fire hose, and they just like don't feel like they know enough. And so they spend like 2 of the 4 years in their term just like learning the ropes. So if we can pre-board them and onboard them efficiently, we can really accelerate what they're able to do, because then as soon as they get elected, they're kind of locked and loaded and ready to go. They have a plan, they understand the terrain, they know what they're doing. And that's really been a game changer for Partnership for Achievement to be doing also. It works, the model works, so we're just gonna try to multiply it and keep it going. We did hear in our partner summit this year, most of the other groups that care about K-12 education like we do agree that it's a lack of information. People just don't know, like they don't know the facts, and they don't see the need to get engaged because they don't really, maybe don't have a great sense of what proficiency levels really are or kind of what's happening. There's an entity in New Jersey that has been doing these types of ads, and I think that we would like to be doing something similar, where it's just like, look, like this kid who you think is getting like A's or doing like reasonably well, I don't know if you probably can't see it from here, but it says today 55% of New Jersey's 4th graders can't read or do math at grade level, not a dissimilar stat from what we see in Minnesota. By 6th grade, it's 64%, and then it's less than a third catch up by 12th grade, even in good districts. And it says 80% of the students are getting A's and B's. So there's this honesty gap, is what they call it, of like what parents think their kids are doing. I just spoke to somebody last week that said my kid just went off to college this year. He was a straight A student. Like we thought he was great, and he went to college, he failed out. Like they're like, what happened? Like he doesn't have what it takes to cut it at the freshman level, and he's coming from like a good school district where he was doing reasonably well. There are other parents that'll say my kid's getting straight A's, but they can't break a 20 on the ACT. Like why is that? And it goes back to the grade inflation thing. And I think that it does our children no favors to convince them that they're great and they're doing fine, and then have them realize when they take a standardized test or go off, to some other realm, whether it's university or elsewhere, that they aren't as smart as they thought they were. They don't have what they need. So there's a lot of like conversations about mental health. And I'm like, that's the real upcoming mental health crisis, in my opinion. I know kids are struggling right now already, but when you have kids going into the real world and they can't achieve their dreams, but they were like very much teed up and they thought that they were on the track to do that, I think that's a terrifying upcoming mental health crisis that we haven't even seen yet. So anyway, this is all kind of more stats about reading. It's not a problem just in the metro area. It's suburban districts that think they're doing great. Here's Edina at 74%, Wayzata's at close to 74%. Still not great. I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement even in the really good districts. And again, not a lack of funding. We've got like 40% of our state budget going to K-12 education. That's a lot of money. It's more than twice private tuition. So yes, our public schools have to serve kids with special needs. So I realize it's not always apples to apples, and that's sometimes the argument is, private schools do not have to take kids who have all of these different special services and things. So we have to be fair about that, but it is still worth looking at that comparison. And you can see that, the average is about 16,500, somewhere in that neighborhood. And, private tuition at some of the kind of like smaller, Christian academies, I'm not sure what this one is, but $7,000-8,000, it's literally half. So I understand why people think we need to incubate more of those programs, because they're a low-cost option.
I stepped out of it, maybe you commented on this before, but universal school choice, I mean, obviously that slide's perfect on that, because you're probably talking about the metro schools and student pupil average is 17,000. If we're at, call it 14 and take the 7, so I mean, obviously, it would be great that we are one of the states that would be universal school choice. Your comments on moving towards universal school choice.
I'm a yes, and I will always be a yes, because I will never take part in any initiative to trap kids in failing school. So I think getting kids out of schools that don't serve them well should be something everybody should be for. I can't think of good arguments against it. People who don't want, there's a lot of discussion about I don't want the strings attached. Homeschoolers have strong feelings about not taking ESA dollars. Private schools are a little bit leery of it. Don't do it then. But don't deprive people who would benefit from those programs from having the option. Let them go. And the competition creates good things, I think. I'm a very big fan of that. And also, I think you weren't in the room at the time, but it's even in states where they've passed universal ESAs and they've had them for a while, they still have 85% of their kids being educated in the public system. They have let parents choose, and there's just not enough space to put all of these kids. I mean, if you opened up the doors tomorrow, most of I don't know how this one's doing, but I feel like most of the private options are busting at the seams, and they've been expanding. I feel like, we don't have the bandwidth to accommodate all of the students who might run for the exits if their parents were financially empowered to make a different choice. So there's kind of an infrastructure move that has to happen there too. I mean, you can't just flip a switch and change that. But I'm yes all day on school choice any way you can get it. Offering parents more options is never a bad thing. So we should fight hard for that, but I think we should also not abandon our public school kids. And I think it's just too easy to be well, school choice is the answer. Both and, right? We need them both. And I think that the states that have it and they're continually trying to expand out the options that they have, you will see the results, because the private school or the public schools will be forced to compete. So it ups the ante for everybody to make sure that they're competitive, which is why I also think this project is important, because if and when we have any other school choice initiatives in Minnesota, we need our public schools to be run well, because all of a sudden they are gonna have to compete. And so I think, locking down school board level leadership is important, because all of a sudden, we already have an enrollment problem. People have run for the exits. Any family who can get their kids out of public school over the last couple of years has probably done that already. So now you're operating with a set of families who don't have that option for whatever reason. It's either financial, or it's kids love athletics too. To be honest, we're in the state of hockey. If you've got a Wayzata hockey player, even if you hate what they're offering educationally, you're gonna stay, because you want your kid to have that opportunity. So there are a lot of reasons why people keep their kids in the public schools. And so anyway, we have to just keep fighting to make that good. A couple slides on safety, we talked about that. Obviously that is one of the top issues that parents get involved in. The activism at the expense of achievement, coercive learning environments. You guys have probably seen all this. I mean, the hallways are plastered with this stuff. You can't escape it. Gender secrecy policies, hopefully at the federal level, they will start putting some pressure on cracking down on some of these just illegal policies. To be honest, there's no excuse for why any of this should be happening. So I am excited to see a little bit more enforcement at that level, because obviously our state level government right now does not share that ambition, and they will actually fight against it. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Classroom and library materials, there's been a lot of book battle stuff going on. I don't love that issue, because I think it's kind of a distraction. I don't think that smutty books in the library are a #1 problem. I don't like it, and I don't think they belong there. And I don't think it should be hard to say we can look at something like this and say it's out. We don't, that has no redeeming value educationally or otherwise. So I think having school boards that can set good policy on this are essential, because this shouldn't be a hard issue to deal with. I think you can set a policy that says if it meets obscenity, definitions, it doesn't need to be here. just doesn't need to be here. And this isn't about like taking out, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird or some of these other books that are like about other themes. This is just overt, gratuitous, sexual or violent material. That's my biggest issue. So enough with that, but again, we're really trying to focus on centrist priorities here. We're not gonna agree with everybody all the time on every single thing, but if we can at least come together on some shared priorities and start rowing in the same direction when it comes to student achievement, I think that's really the best we can hope for in the public school environment. So we try to equip people with sort of some guiding principles, some themes that we can all kind of agree on, and try to just come up with a foundation that we can build, you know, some bridges with people that we maybe disagree with on other stuff. I'm gonna kind of just flip through these slides, but again, we're just, I think, really having to keep people focused on their main principles. And what you run on should be what you serve with. So priorities, time and money, talked about that. There's only so much time and money here, so it really is a matter of, are we making sure that we're pointing all of our resources at what matters? And then partner with us. I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can get involved. I encourage people to think about ways that you can encourage and equip other people to get more involved as well. You know, it's not enough to just have the same 1 or 2 people showing up at school board meetings every month. Like, it doesn't help. We have to cultivate candidates. It is a huge act of service to run and serve. I mean, deep time and energy has to be put into campaigning, and then watching these people serve at a capacity that they need to actually affect change. Like, it's a part-time job or a full-time job for some of these people, and God bless them for taking it really seriously, but you look at the people that have been elected recently and how much time they prep before their meetings. They're doing these, you know, work sessions and other sort of in-between things. I would say easily this is a part-time job in terms of, you know, 20 plus hours a month. So it has to be the right person, you know. Not everybody can dedicate that kind of time. Like, professionally, they're busy and they have young kids. And so always having an ear and an eye out for people who are in your circle of influence, whether it's in your church community, golf buddies, friends, neighbors, whatever, figuring out who is in your realm that might be a good candidate and trying to speak into that. People need to be asked more than once. You know, like, you could ask somebody, they're like, no, that's not me. Like, no, that's not, like, find someone else. You got to keep asking them, and ask them 20 times until you get to a yes, because there are some people that I think would be so good. They just need to be empowered and actually really, you know, put it to prayer and consideration. So what is interesting is among our network, it is a very common theme, and probably not a coincidence, that a lot of these people are openly Christian people. They realize that they feel, I mean, somebody was like, I lost a battle with God. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to run, but like, I feel called to do this. And I'm like, I get that. I think that there are a lot of people in our network that feel a calling to this work, and to be doing it well, and to be doing it in a way that inspires other people to do it as well. So that's kind of my spiel here, and I'm happy to take a few more questions. I know we're sort of at time, so I want to respect that everybody
I don't know
has
how we
places
do
to
it
go.
on time. Anybody have to watch?
Yeah,
It's 11:45.
11:45.
Oh, well, we're gonna wrap it up then.
Yeah.
That was
Um,
great though.
For those of you that don't know, we homeschooled our 8 kids.
Did you?
And they're all doing well. You know, our oldest 2 are lawyers. And one of the things we found is, we taught them the basics of education, and then how to live life the rest of the time, and the responsibility of doing chores and having a household and things like that. But there was a time, especially with the boys, that they started to realize they need to own their education. And once they realized that, which for the guys was in high school, they took off. And it was really fun to see that. The girls seemed to do that younger, to grab hold of that. But I said to my son, who wanted to go into the public school because he was very social, I said to him, you may not do anything at home, and you're gonna be better off than going into the public school right now. And he's one of the lawyers. But anyway, all to say, great job. Thank you so much.
A couple pieces of like literature if you want to just take just like an overview of what we do, and you can take one and share it with somebody else, or take my card and reach out to me after.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, I wanna pray for her.
Yeah.
I will take it.
Thank you. Join with me. Father,
Yes,
we
please.
thank you for her heart and what you've given her in, the ability to put all of this together, God. We pray that you would increase that, increase her anointing, increase her tent pegs, that she can accomplish more, and bring more people around her that can support her financially, but also in working and putting their hands and feet and their mind to expanding and helping her, that it's just not all her. And we pray that you'll give her greater vision